Hi, everybody. I'm Bruce Carlson from the AARP Washington State Office. We are live here in our conference room in Seattle, and it's 2020, and that means it's time for the census. And I think all of us know a little bit about the census from our middle school years, but I think a lot of us don't know how important it is. And in fact, AARP recognizes how important it is for those of us who are AARP age to be counted in the census, because it figures into all kinds of things in terms of federal funding and things of that nature. And also, AARP is helping our members get jobs working on the census. So you could be a census taker, but there's all kinds of other roles as well. And I personally don't know too much about it, but we've got somebody on our live stream today who is our AARP, excuse me, our AARP lead, Jennifer Baier. Our Baier, sorry, is our lead for the AARP Census Project, and we're going to bring her in. I'm going to put on my Skype headphones, and we'll see if Jennifer is there. So, Jennifer, hello.
Hi, Bruce. How are you doing?
Oh, excellent, excellent. It's good to see you. This is our first live stream with one of our national office experts. So I appreciate, Jennifer, you being on this. And I think the first thing that we wanted to ask you, and this is us, is why is the census so important to AARP, and why are you working full-time on it, and why is it so important?
Sure. Well, until I took this position, I didn't realize just how much the census impacts my everyday life. So AARP is really involved in the census because census-guided programs bring about $675 billion a year into communities across the United States for things like roads, schools, clinics, small businesses. And so by taking 10 minutes to take the census, you really have the opportunity to define your decade. And that's why AARP is involved. We want our members to know just how important it is for you to participate in this upcoming census.
Great, excellent. Well, one of the things I think, though, that people are really interested in is the jobs, the opportunity for part-time jobs. I actually know a couple of our volunteers have already started working on the census. So what are the opportunities for jobs for the AARP population?
Sure. Definitely a couple of things to talk about here. First of all, the jobs are pretty well paying. The Census Bureau is paying between $17.50 and $30 an hour for those part-time temporary jobs. The other thing the Census Bureau told us is that the members that we're referring for the jobs are dependable, reliable, know their communities best. These are experienced workers who've had a lifetime of job experience, so they make excellent census workers. The Census Bureau is hiring 500,000 people in order to carry out this census, and there's all sorts of
500,000, you say?
Yeah, half
a million. Awesome.
Which means that in order to hire 500,000 people, they estimate that they really need to recruit and screen about 2.5 million people. So it's quite the undertaking. So they are doing that right now. So the jobs are open and they are literally available in almost every community, even from the largest to the smallest across the United States. So there's lots of different types of jobs. The vast majority of the positions are those what we call enumerators, the people who will go door to door after the initial census invites arrive, and we'll talk more about that. But if people don't fill out the census, a friendly census worker will then come to your door and ask you to please fill it out. So for the vast majority of the jobs, it's enumerator positions, walking your community, knocking on doors. However, there are lots of other types of jobs because the Census Bureau has opened temporary offices across the United States, both regionally and in areas across the United States in every state. So there are supervisory positions, there are positions that you can do from home, there are all sorts of office and clerical positions. That kind of sums it up. There's really like 5 different types of jobs that people can do. So there's jobs for everybody.
Great. Well, I think one of the questions that people have is, what is the census going to be like? I think in the past we've answered it by mail. This year I think it's going to be online mostly, but there's also going to be people coming to your door. So I think there's a fair amount of uncertainty of what is the census going to mean to me. Do I have to go online to a web form? What if somebody comes to my door? How do I know that they're real? And I also wanted to add, I think we'll be able to answer questions that show up in our Facebook comments. So if you have a question that you think that Jennifer can answer, please go ahead and put that in there. But having said that, Jennifer, how is the census going to work for the average person?
Yeah, let's go through that because this is really important. And I've been seeing even some really good publications get this wrong. So as national partners with the Census Bureau, AARP totally has the facts on this. So first things first, check your mailbox between March 12th and the 20th. For 95% of us, we will receive a postcard in the mail. That postcard will invite us to either take the census online or by phone. For some people, there will also be a hard copy paper form right away with that first mailing. So you can absolutely fill it out and send it back in by mail. The Census Bureau, you know them, they're a big data-driven organization. They're going to try to anticipate who would like a paper copy or who does not have broadband, high-speed internet access in that first mailing. However, if you don't get a paper copy that very first shot, but you really want a paper copy, I'm going to recommend that you kind of be lazy, because here's what's going to happen. The next mailing will arrive in your mailbox. It'll be a letter, March 16th to the 24th. And that will just remind you to take the census however you've been invited to take it. After that, if you haven't responded yet, your third mailer will arrive. It will be a postcard reminder, March 26th to April 3rd. Again, inviting you to participate. After that, here's when, if you have not responded yet, a paper form will arrive in the mail. That's April 8th to the 16th. So if you're waiting for that paper form, no problem. Just do nothing until April 8th to the 16th, and you will absolutely be offered a paper form. So we've heard from our members that they're like, I really want that paper form. No worries. Everybody gets a paper form. So just know it's coming. And then if you haven't done any of those things, April 20th to the 27th, one more reminder shows up in the mail. After that is when you've got until the end of May. People will begin knocking on doors, census takers. So they'll have smartphones and they'll be deployed to addresses who have not yet responded. So hopefully, if you've responded, nobody will knock on your door. But if you haven't, a door knocker may show up at your door.
Great. Well, that all sounds great. But one of the things that is also a program here at AARP is our Fraud Watch network. And people are concerned about fraud in the sense of census workers showing up at your door who aren't real census workers, who are con artists, or some sort of website that's going to steal your personal information under the guise of asking for your census info. So what advice would you have for people to stay safe from fraud in terms of the census?
Yeah, very valid concerns. AARP is working with the fraud team at the Census Bureau in lockstep. We're sharing information back and forth. So we'll push out anything as soon as we hear about it. But there's definitely some things you can do to keep yourself safe from census frauds and scams. So the first thing you should know is if a census worker comes to your door, they will have a census ID badge. It will have a watermark on it from the Department of Commerce. If you are not sure that that census worker is a valid worker, you can always, even if somebody comes and knocks on your door, you can always call in and go find one of those reminder letters or postcards. You can still call in or go online and fill out the census. So if you don't want to answer your door, somebody shows up and you're like, oh, shoot, I still didn't participate in the census. Just call in or go online and take the census, and you don't have to talk to that person who's at your door. Census workers will have census logo bags. And if you're very concerned that there are people in your neighborhood who shouldn't be there, the Census Bureau is working with local law enforcement So they know when census workers are going to be deployed to neighborhoods. So you can go ahead, call local law enforcement. You can also log on to the 2020 census.gov. There'll be a map that shows if there's supposed to be census workers in your area that day. So feel free to call the AARP Fraud Watch Network if you have concerns. We're connected with the Census Bureau. I'm happy to give out that number, Bruce, if it would be helpful. I know we'll list resources after as well, I think.
Yes, yes. But if you'd like to give the phone number, that's great.
Yeah, I'll say it twice just in case people want to write it down. So if you'd like to call the AARP Fraud Watch helpline and just make sure a census worker is legitimate, you can call 1-877-908-3360. That's 1-877-908-3360.
Great. And there is also a website, and I'm going to put that up right now.
Okay.
And that's aarp.org/census. And
Yep.
excuse me, and that's pretty much got all the information, right?
Yep, we will keep updating it. And if we hear of anything that's breaking news, we will absolutely post that to the site. There are a couple of things that census workers will never ask you. So for example, if somebody knocks on your door and they ask you your social security number or a bank account number, those are not valid census questions. No census taker is ever going to ask those. If they threaten to fine you for not taking the census or threaten jail time, also not legitimate. There are no fines. There is nobody who can take you to jail for not participating in the census.
Yeah, that's always good to know that, and that's one of our general fraud watch tips is don't be rushed into something that I think the census is going on all year. If you don't answer a question that day, that doesn't mean that you're going to jail, right?
Right. No, absolutely not. You are not going to jail. And in fact, while we encourage people to fill out all 9 questions, there are only 9 questions of the census, if there's one that you skip, it's unlikely that somebody will follow up with you. They may, but if there's a question you skip, the other data is still valid. So if you answer 8 out of 9 questions, for example. And I think it's probably a good time to just reiterate that one of the most controversial questions we heard about earlier in the year, the citizenship question, does not appear on the 2020 census. Now, we can get into the difference between the American Community Survey and the census if you want, Bruce, but just know that the citizenship question is not one of the 9 questions on the 2020 census.
Okay, yeah, I had not heard of the other survey, so if you could just give us the short version of what that is.
Sure. American Community Survey, also administered by the Census Bureau. It is ongoing. It doesn't happen once every 10 years. It literally goes out every month to a subset of the population. So they collect from about 3.5 million people a year, a very deep dive of data. So it's 45 questions long. It asks things like, how many people live in your household? Where do they work? What is your commute time? It's about 45 questions long. It used to be the old census long form. So those are always ongoing, and you may get both forms in 2020. So some lucky people will get both the 45 questions and the 9 questions. Should definitely fill them both out. So they're both important. But the American Community Survey is legitimate. And it's green when it arrives in the mail, I think. The census form is blue, but they're both valid.
Okay, and is that also one that you are required by law to fill out, or is only the census that way, or is the census not required by law? It's my impression that it is, but what's the story there?
Yep, both of them are constitutionally mandated. Both of them are run by the Census Bureau. So yes, we hope that people will fill them out, both of them. And both of them bring funding to your community. Washington, for example, based on census data in the American Community Survey, gets about $16.6 billion a year in federal funds for all sorts of programs, as we've talked about. So it's really important to fill that out, to bring funds to your community. I always tell this story. If you don't fill out the census in your community, those dollars are set, the 675 billion. So if you don't fill it out, but everybody in Oregon fills it out, that money is just going to divert, to Oregon. So it's best to bring it to your community. And, another state living nearby you, if everybody fills it out, they'll get the money.
Yeah, I think that's true that the members of the U.S. House that our state has is based on the census. And I believe last time around, we actually added a 10th member of Congress based on census data. Would that be true across the board, that funding and congressional representation and all that is based on the census?
Yep, that's another great reason to fill out the census. It absolutely determines how many seats your state gets in Congress. And so absolutely important to know how many people are living there. This time around, there's definitely a lot of seats on the table. I know Texas might gain 3. California might lose 1. So we'll see. Montana might get 1 that they lost, like 1990s. I think they lost 1. So it's absolutely important to get that accurate political representation for your state.
All right. And just going back to the fraud aspect for just 1 second.
Sure.
If someone is concerned that there's an unauthorized fraud worker in their neighborhood or something, who would you recommend that they call first? Would you recommend that they go to our website, that they call local law enforcement, that they call a national hotline? What's the one thing that you would do first?
Yeah, I think that definitely local law enforcement will be the fastest and ready to respond. And the Census Bureau is working in lockstep with local law enforcement. So I would definitely call them if a census worker just doesn't feel right, or if they've asked you for money or anything like that.
All right, good. Well, I think we've covered pretty much at least the short version of what our members need to know about the census.
Sure.
And then thanks very much for all the information. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you think is important?
I don't know. Are there any questions from the audience? I can tell you some of the things we've been asked about before. One of the things we could talk about is the importance of counting young children. We get this question all the time. And then we can talk about people who live in 2 places. How about that? Those are 2 things that have come up a lot.
All right,
so the
excellent,
first
yeah.
thing, yeah, good. Okay. So the first thing, the number 1 undercounted group in the United States is children under the age of 4. So the census form arrives, it says how many people are living in your household. If I have a 2-year-old, I don't think to count them. I think, oh, well, it's me and my husband, and that's it. No, that 2-year-old also counts. So I have 3 people living in my household. Here's why it's important to count those kids. It means funding for their schools. It means funding for meal programs, education programs, translation services. And so if you don't count a 2-year-old, the next time that you're going to be able to count them is when they're 12. So that's an awful lot of education. Or if you don't count your 5-year-old, the next time they'll count is when they're 15. They've just gone from kindergarten to high school without funding, a decade of funding for their education. So definitely make sure to count young kids who are living with you. That goes for grandparents who are raising grandchildren. Be in communication with the parents if you're sharing time. If kids live in 2 households, exactly equally, let's say 6 months a year and 6 months a year, count them where they are on April 1. So you're in 2 locations, count them where they are on April 1. Great.
I seem to have lost my ability to change scenes here. I apologize for that. Let me try a different method. Okay, there I am. So that's good. I've just lost. Yeah, but we're actually here live, so sometimes things go a little wonky. But I think we've covered basically a lot of what we planned to talk about. So I think if you're satisfied that our members have learned a lot, I think we're good. I'm going to put up the graphic with the website. What sort of stuff will people find at that site?
Yeah, let's talk. Do you guys have snowbirds there? People who live in 2 locations? Let's
yes,
talk about.
There's a lot in Arizona, especially.
Gotcha. Let's talk about them real quick, and then we can talk about the resources on the website. So another question we're getting a lot from our members is, I live in Washington for 9 months of the year, but when the census comes, I'm going to be in Arizona. Where should I count myself? Because all of my mail is being forwarded to me in Arizona. Where should I count myself? And where you should count yourself is where you spend most of the year. Because think about it like this: the funding for hospitals, the funding for roads, the funding for wildlife preservation, it's going to go to the community that you put down. So if you're spending most of your time in Washington 9 months a year, you want that funding to go where you are, to support where you are most of the time. If you get the invitation in the mail in Arizona, you can still go online or call in or write down your address back home, and that is perfectly fine. If you split time between two places, or you rent an RV and you're on the road all the time, and there's nowhere that you really land, just count yourself where you are on Census Day, which is officially April 1, 2020. April Fool's Day. Don't know why they picked that date.
Well, even though it's April Fool's Day, this is still a real thing.
Very important.
So I'm going to put up the graphic. It's AARP.org/census. And what sort of info can we find there, just in short?
Yep. Number one thing on the site right now is a big click through to the jobs, which you can also apply for. We should tell people how to apply for the jobs. The jobs are at 2020census.gov/jobs. The other site you can check for census jobs if you are looking for either higher level positions with the census or something permanent is usajobs.com. So that's the other place you can check for the census jobs. So that's first on our website. We've got 3 animated videos on the site right now, one talking about the jobs, one talking about staying safe from frauds and scams, and one that talks about the importance of taking the census. We've got a 30-minute webinar up there right now that's a deep dive into what census jobs look like, what they're hiring for, the process, all of that. That's up on the site right now. And then we've got fact sheets, and we will keep updating those. Right now, there's our Fraud Watch fact sheet, and we're going to be adding Hispanic Latino outreach sheets and all sorts of other groups. Information for people living in nursing homes. We've got a fact sheet on that coming. All sorts of different fact sheets. As soon as we get them, we put them up there.
All right, great. I think we are good for now. I was going to mention, if you are seeing this video after the live stream, if you're seeing it later on, if you want to ask a question in the comments, we will answer that and try and get the information for you. And also, if you want to go to AARP.org/census, again, all the information is there. Jen, I want to say thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. And thanks for all the work that you and your team are doing on this very important subject.
Thanks, Bruce.
All right. Well, that is it for our live stream today. Thank you for joining us. And if you want to leave a comment, again, we'll do our best to answer that. And thank you very much. I'm going to put the graphic up for the website, and I hope you have a nice afternoon.